Today's noisy digital-first world is a challenging one for business owners. How do you get more people to know you, trust you, and to respect your brand? How do you stay front of mind with your target audience, as well as talked about in a positive way in the marketplace? The answer is public relations, but not as you know it. Get ready to unlock the potential of your business through the power of PR, content, and digital communications. Get ready to become your own PR machine.
Welcome back to the Become Your Own PR Machine podcast. My name is Trevor Young. Now, there is so much negative chat these days around social media, and it can be very off-putting for some people, professionals and business owners and leaders of all kinds, and so much so sometimes that they're staying away from it. And the problem then, of course, is that if they're missing out on all the positive benefits and opportunities that come with having an active presence on social media, and not just for them personally, but also professionally, but also for the business and the organisation they represent. So what's the answer? Well, to help us unpack this vexed question, I have with me today an expert who deals with this type of issue all the time. Her name is Rita Zonius, and she's known as the Enterprise Social Engineer. And she's a social media advisor and digital workplace practitioner who offers valuable insights on networking, communication, and social media use in professional settings. Welcome to the show, Rita.
Hi, Trevor. It's nice to see you again. It's been ages.
It has. Now, I will say, I'm going to get into your story a little bit in a tick, and then I was just reminded, just as we were chatting earlier, about I'm not going to say it wasn't an infamous, it was a social media post that years later, and you can correct me how many years, I still remember, but we'll get into that. Don't let me forget that one. But just for context, just so listeners get a bit of a feel for who you are and what do you do, then who are you and what do you do?
Well, I'm a career communicator. I've always wanted to work in comms. I've been involved for many decades now. I won't say how many. But I started my career in PR agencies, went into corporate affairs and loved that. And then when I discovered the power of social and saw that organisations and people could use some help with it. When I say social technologies too, I mean internal social as well. So yep. You know very well I love enterprise social networks. Of course, COVID's put the spotlight on those. Yep, so I fast found myself helping organisations with their enterprise social challenges. And then also, I fell into helping leaders build their impact and their influence using social media tools. So I've been doing that globally. I have personally coached more than 1,000 people all over the world in how to build a purposeful digital footprint. It's good fun.
Yes, and you're active too. You're a fit person. You're a what's the side hustle, the gym hustle you got going?
The side hustle is I'm a body pump instructor. So yes, a few times a week I will be putting people through their paces. So I'm a coach in more ways than one, in the gym, coaching people in social media, and I'm also a trained executive coach as well. So I guess I love coaching.
I think so. And you better continue loving it because there's a number of strands of business right there for you. Now, thank you for that. Now, as I promised, this social media post that I remember, and I'll explain it and you can tell me how many years ago this was, because if you can remember someone's social media post after this amount of time, and you're going to tell me the amount of time, it's got to be a good one. And I remember it went really, really well for you. I think it was on LinkedIn, but you may have put it on Twitter because I know you're very active on both. But you worked at one of Australia's largest banks, the ANZ Bank, and you were leaving there after X amount of years service, and you got someone to take a photo of you walking out the doors of headquarters and entering your new chapter. That just shows the power of a photo because that went off.
It did, and that was 7 years ago. 7 years ago, maybe 8. Let's say 7.
How good is my memory? Seriously. But that's,
it was fun, wasn't it? Stepping into the light.
It was. It was a good photo, and I don't know how many times you took the photo, but someone was taking it for you because you're pictured from a distance coming out of the corporate headquarters of a major bank. And when we say a picture tells 1,000 words, it really does. And with that and a paragraph or so as a caption on social media, and it said everything. And I remember you got lots of comments, lots of likes on that. And it's just, it just always brings home to me that the value of taking a photo in situ and telling a little story around it and how we can do that. And is that something you like about social media, the fact that we can get our message and our story out there in micro ways, and it's a skill to be learned, but is that something you like about social media?
Look, honestly, when I first started my career as a communicator, I saw myself as being behind the curtain and helping leaders with, here are your notes for this media interview, here's a speech for you. Comms people back in the day saw themselves very much being behind the curtain.
Yep.
But then we got to a point where organisations realised it's crazy to not allow staff to use social media inside their organisations. We need to equip our people and help them, because it does come with a lot of healthy fear around it. People see social media not going so well for some people, and so then they become fearful and they get concerned they'll say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing. But you're absolutely right. With some time and focus on it and figuring out a strategy for yourself, you can absolutely make it work for you. It needn't be a scary thing. It can be a lot of fun as well.
Yeah.
So I say if you're hesitant, then maybe start to think about it in a different way, because it is about helping other people, adding value to others. I think a problem comes from people carrying these old rules and old ways that we used to kind of live our lives. When you went to school, or I know I did, when I went to school, you were told, be quiet. When, the teacher asks you a question, put up your hand and speak when you're spoken to. All these things are, have been well and truly gone, and the world is a very different place now. So I feel like people have carried this slightly old-fashioned view from way back in the day that it's impolite to talk about yourself. It's impolite to shine a light on yourself. But actually, if you flip it, and when you share what you know and you do it in the service of others, that's where it can make a difference. So then it's not about you. When I talk about it this way with senior people, you can see the anxiety kind of lift out, come out of their shoulders. Like, oh, okay, no one will think I'm, big noting myself here. So yeah,
it's an interesting point. And when it is about the audience. And that's about content and social and PR and all of it. It's about the audience. And I guess, an overhang, and particularly you coming from the corporate, you'll see this more, there is that overhang of, it's about us all the time. And it's not, and it's about risk aversion and all of those things. And we'll dig into a lot of those, because there's so many blockers and roadblocks for genuinely good people who are professionals and experienced and credible in a world where there's so many people who aren't credible, and they're the ones that are putting themselves out there more than anyone. That it's we want them out there and hear from them. But again, it's their voice, but they don't have to be chest beating all the time. And the other thing I think it'd be good just to hear from you, because I guess you've worked in enterprise, but obviously with people who are professionals and professional settings, and worked at McKinsey's and banks and other publicly listed companies, and also now you're coaching individuals. Are there some where we're in mid 2024? What are people thinking? These people that you're dealing with, thinking about social media at the moment, and how have they changed their view on it, if at all?
Well, it's interesting that you asked me that question, because I'll never forget my very good friend Dion Hinchcliffe, digital workplace futurist over in Washington, D.C., said to me one day, Rita, no matter how far we think we've come in the digital age, there's always someone cave painting. And so what I find is that I listen to myself sometimes and I think this sounds really simple, and I say it over and over again, but there genuinely are people on a journey at different stages. There are some people who haven't ever touched social media. There are some who are dipping their toe in, and then there are others who are, often running with it and doing amazing things. So there isn't one approach to help all of those people. But what is common about all of those people is that they all started from a place of fear, the fear of making themselves vulnerable, worrying about whether anyone will care about what they have to say. And these are incredibly accomplished senior people who've written books even, who would say to me, well, I'm not really sure what to say. And so the journey does really begin with thinking about what do I stand for? What do I want to be known for? And then choosing a couple of content pillars and focusing on those. So we can't talk about 50 things, but it's important to figure out what the 2 or 3 things are that matter to you that you're going to focus on. You can't be all things to all people. You have to figure out the space you want to be in and be very disciplined and focused in sharing, inside opinion, advice around those topic areas, and staying away from the cool, trendy things. Just because other people are talking about them doesn't mean that you should. So that's how I think people can make this journey successful, is keep it tight, keep it small, stick to your knitting on a couple of subjects.
And then as you get used to it, then you can expand a little more. And, if they're... I look at people who are experts and thought leaders, and some people cross boundaries, but experts kind of stick to their knitting in a few lanes and go deep, deep down. And thought leaders want to explore different areas and join dots and change the way people think about a topic or an issue. And I would think that people tend to veer one way or the other. I've seen people who just love sticking to their industry or what it is that they want to focus on and be known for that. And then there's others that will, get involved in all sorts of discussions, and sometimes to maybe their detriment and maybe not, but it makes them different and stand out. And as we know, you've got to have an opinion and a perspective to kind of stand out from the noise today. But when we're talking social media, we're probably veering a little bit more LinkedIn. Where do you see Mr. Twitter, Mr. X these days? I can't call it. I seriously can't call it.
Personally, that was my first true love, Twitter, and it's just, honestly, it's not the same for me anymore. And I look at it, look at it sadly. I prefer to focus on LinkedIn these days. Having said that, if there's something I think is worthwhile, then I will go and share it. I still like the platform X to go and have a look at news and things. Often things break there really quickly, but I don't have the same love for it. LinkedIn is, I think it's probably by now got 1 billion people on it, or as close to, or just over that. It's the world's largest professional network. It's table stakes. You have to be there. Whether you like it or not. When I'm Googling you and I'm looking you up, your LinkedIn profile is probably going to be the first thing that comes up. And if it's looking a little bit like a barren desert, that's not great. If I can't find you at all, that's probably
it's even worse. And if you haven't got your photo and it's just that silhouette of a figure instead of the real you, then you're in trouble. I guess, and this really, it doesn't matter whether you're running a business, a growing business, or you're a solopreneur and an expert in your space, or you're leading a major company. Everything we're talking about is relevant for all of them. I guess when you're running a bigger company, you've got, maybe you might become a bit more risk averse potentially. And if it's a public company, of course, then as we know, just mentioning the owner of X, Elon Musk, he's had his own issues he runs a public company, several public companies really, doesn't he? And just getting out and tweeting and making some noise, and by doing that, he ended up with Twitter. So careful what you wish for. But in terms of, I think Twitter may be turning the corner maybe a little bit. I've noticed that it's settled down a lot. And I think maybe there's some room. I think it might be making a bit of a comeback. That's just me personally. But still got algorithmic changes and, things to deal with, as we do with LinkedIn. LinkedIn's really affecting that side of things on the algorithm. But I guess with Twitter, though, all the influencers are there, the media's there, the stories are breaking. It still is the influence channel. Do you recommend that some of your clients and that consider it, or do they want to shy away from it? What's their view of it? Okay, thought I'd just jump in here with a quick promo. This episode's brought to you by Pocket PR Essentials, Volume 1. This is my audio-only micro-coaching series for ambitious business owners and entrepreneurial professionals. Think training and inspiration in your pocket. Listen on the go via your podcast app. Go to www.pocketpressentials.com to learn more. And as I record this, a very special launch price is applicable. Now, back to the show.
I honestly haven't had a conversation about Twitter for a long time with anybody. I think a lot of people are parking it and just watching to see what happens. I hope you're right, and I hope it is turning a corner, because it was a wonderful place once upon a time. I hope it can regain some more credibility. I'd like to go back there, but for now, I think most people are focused on LinkedIn. Yep. The people that I talk to.
Yep. And I guess the other part is with Twitter, you've got to be active, otherwise it's not going to work for you. You can't just post and ghost. I mean, you shouldn't do that on LinkedIn, but particularly on Twitter, you don't want to do that. And that's when you can reach out to people. I mean, from a media perspective, if the media are on it, you can reach out to them. I mean, and the media today is not just journalists. And if it's a public company, then you've got the analysts on there as well. So I guess it's what are your goals, etc. But let's skew it more with LinkedIn. I mean, LinkedIn is, we've seen some pretty amazing. The personal brand, like all the big companies that you deal with and the people who they work for or run, I mean, at the end of the day, they would have probably solid LinkedIn pages, but as we see time and time again, and Elon Musk and Richard Branson, and there are many others, the personal brand is a heck of a lot bigger than the company brand. Heck of a lot bigger.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, look, I should say too at the outset, being coming from a corporate affairs world, all social media engagement too, let's understand, it's not a silver bullet. It's not going to do everything for you, even though I love it and I'm heavily involved in it. Social media engagement is still one part of an organisation's overall communication strategy. So yes, you want senior leaders to be visible there because you have strategic reasons for them to do so. And so then it follows why certain people want help because they are part of that plan. Also, it means choosing your platforms carefully. Just because we have lots of platforms doesn't mean you have to be on all of them. It is about very much starting with strategy and figuring out how social media fits into that strategy, and then you take it from there.
So I want to get into the strategic part of that in a tick, but before we go down that path, you've probably met so many sceptics and so many people, their view of social media is 10 years, 15 years out of date. What's your comeback to people who are dismissive, who don't like it, who are skeptical of it, and really often that is shorthand for I'm scared of it. Let's be fair, but they'll never say that. How do you approach people like that who that they're going to benefit if they get up on it?
And that's right. No matter, as I said, I've coached many people all over the world. It doesn't matter which country they're from or what language they speak. People have the same concerns about social media because they see it when it doesn't go so well. They would typically say things like, "I don't have time to do this." Yeah, they rarely say I'm frightened of it. They wouldn't say that, but I do think it's a genuine concern is that they don't know really how to do it well. But they say, and I never needed it 10 years before then, so I was successful without it. So why the hell do I need it now? But the world is a very different place now because back in the day when I started as a corporate communications operative, I was faxing media releases to journalists. I was the gatekeeper between a leader and an article in the newspaper. The journalist had to come to me to ask to interview somebody. But now these barriers between internal and external communication have all gone. So, I help people understand that the world is a very different place now. Whether you like it or not, we live in a connected world. And whether you like it or not, people are looking you up and they are forming a perception about you based on what they find. So hence we circle back around. If I Google you and I can't find anything about you, that also says something to me about you. And it's not great. It's not a good story. So I joke sometimes to say, well, if I can't find anything about you, you might be an axe murderer. I don't know. So it's better for us. So you can't control my perception of you, but what you can control is how you show up.
Yes.
And it starts with having a considered digital footprint. Who are you? What do you stand for? What can you talk about underwater? What do you love? What do you love to engage in? And by helping people to identify those things, I say to them, well, you love those things and you've had a long career and then you know all of this stuff. But if you just hold it inside, it's not helping anybody. So particularly when there are senior leaders, if I talk about it in a way that helps them understand they're mostly leaving a legacy or leaving some goodness in the world. So giving people advice or sharing insights and views and opinions that help someone to take that information and run with it and do something good, or it helps them avoid a train crash. So when you flip the story and they say to me, well, I never needed it then, I really don't need it now. So it's actually not about you and your career progression. It is about you, in a backhanded way, it is about your progression and positioning yourself. But when we give of ourselves selflessly and we share great stuff with people who know a lot less about that subject matter than we do, that's what helps build your credibility. That's what helps make you credible and interesting and influential in the world. It's actually not about turning the cameras and the lights onto yourself. We all know, we've seen this, Trevor, haven't we, since COVID? It's just a bit off-putting, all these people in the world who think, they're going to become gurus in 5 minutes, and it just doesn't work. This is a long game as well. So when I talk about it that way with leaders, they fast start to forget the fear and start to see the opportunity.
And one big part of it too, particularly if you're in a bigger organisation, but even in a smaller business, you've got employees and suppliers and partners and stakeholders, and they want to see you out and about as well. I mean, it helps deepen connection with them. It helps builds trust, and hey, it's good for your personal brand for when you go to for another job, which you'll probably end up having to do at some point.
Well, this is the crazy thing about it, and I've really noticed this. I've had a lot more people come and turn to me for help because of a lot of organisations transforming, restructuring, people losing their roles. And I'll say to them, well, how many people do you know who do the same job as you, but who do not work in your company? And they, and I have to say to you, most of the time, the answer is, well, actually, I live in my bubble and I know a lot of people in the company that I work for. I haven't really had time to connect with others. But we all know in those moments, it's good insurance and it's sensible to build a wider network, because you never know. You never know when you might need it one day or when someone else in your network needs your help. It's it's interesting to me that people don't think to broaden their networks, and I think it's useful. I also think when you're engaged, coming back to wider communication strategy, it's great for internal comms as well. So much internal communication happens outside.
Of course.
And what happens outside comes into the organisation. What happens inside gets leaked and goes outside super fast as well. So, this all comes down to the barriers between internal and external comms coming down in the digital world, and whether you like it or not, as a leader, you have to come to grips with being engaged in that digital world in a little, in some way. It may be a little, it may be a lot. Depends on how much time you have. But you just cannot afford to be there. When I look you up, I want to find something meaningful about you. I don't want to find crickets.
Yeah, and the other part of it is, people don't like faceless organisations. The Edelman Trust Barometer tells us time and time again that CEOs aren't trusted, and trust is just in short supply and getting shorter all the time. And this is where the opportunity is to take that chance, be out front, and take people behind the velvet rope of the organisation, behind the public face. Because the bigger the company, the more layers there are to it. And, the people who make the difference and who have got a voice, they're hiding away in the shadows of the boardroom. And what's the point? What is the point?
Yeah, and look, we all love stories, right? We've loved them since we were little kids. Everyone loves a story. We're all kind of born voyeurs in that way. We love to get behind the scenes and understand what's going on. Yeah, and the more an organisation can show a human face the better off they are. Yeah, sure, you have your publicly listed company, you have the regular calendar of dates and events that you have to meet in your financial calendar, but there's so much fun stuff that can happen as well with this that helps anyone connected to you, your partners, your customers, suppliers, etc., better understand, who you are as an organisation. Yeah. And it's really good fun too, isn't it, Trevor? It's fun.
Oh, absolutely it is. And I think, if you're a leader in a business or a business owner and it's not just about I guess a lot of them, they might think it's the content first, and that's why you've got the pillars and everything. How do you find that people or leaders and, senior professionals, when it comes to having to talk back to people on social media, comment on.
Yes, I see.
Right? I love this, and so there's two parts. One is the comments, responding to comments on your posts. So you've got them enthused and they're creating content. What am I going to say to this person who's just spoken to me online? And then the other part of it is, which I'm not sure many of them would do, maybe they do, comment on other people's posts.
Now, you raise a very, very good point, because social media is called social for a reason.
Otherwise, it's just media.
That's right. It's not a one-way street. Imagine if we were at dinner together, Trevor, and I didn't know you, and I sat down next to you, and I proceeded to talk at you for a solid hour, blah, 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 in your ear, and I don't let you get a word in. And then as soon as I finish talking, I get up and I leave. What would you think of me?
Yeah.
So this is what I say to people then. You don't do it in real life. Don't do it in social media. This idea that you can come and say, ta-da, here's my story, let me push it out, now talk to the hand, that does not work. When you engage in social, that is part of the deal you make with yourself. The commitment that you make is that you will engage with people's information, that you will engage with their posts, show others love. If you want love in return, then you have to. It works in a multi-directional way. You cannot just push things out and expect people to engage with it, and then you give them nothing. You give them nothing in return. It doesn't work.
And I remember the old, and it's the one you're going to hear for everyone. I haven't got time. And again, it's not that you haven't got time. It's just that it's not a priority for you. But I always, many years ago, 10 years ago probably, I always used to point people to, well, Gary Vaynerchuk's a lot busier than you will ever be. Seriously, he runs, multi-million dollar companies, multiple million-dollar companies, and he's talking and he's doing everything, and yet he still manages to tweet, 50 times a day. Now he does all his own tweeting, etc. Today, he's content-wise, he's got a team of about 20 behind him, so I don't expect that. I'm very aware of that. But in the early days when he was full on and commenting and doing, he didn't have time, but he found time because it was important to him, and it's turned him into a global name and a best-selling author and one of the top speakers in America. So, there's not enough time. You've got to make the time, and it's got to become part of your brand, your habit, your day-to-day.
Yeah, and I liken it to, so being a gym instructor and teaching body pump, to build muscles in the gym, you need to show up regularly. Yep. And flex them and work them, and you're not going to change the shape of your body in a week, but showing up consistently and putting in the time and the effort will show you results. And I often tell this nice story actually around learning to build your social media muscles is like going to the gym and building muscle there. It does. It takes the time, and you're right. You have to make the commitment. Otherwise, the dead certainty is if you don't do anything, then nothing will happen and nothing will change. So that's the flip side of the conversation.
The body of work. So let's go back to the type of content, and again, we're looking probably LinkedIn in as a preferable channel. But there's so many different ways of using LinkedIn today. I mean, I've always suggested for people that a good way to start is just sharing other people's stuff. I mean, we know that if you put a link in LinkedIn today, it goes nowhere, but they're kind of penalised for sending people off, but that's not a reason not to do it. And, sharing the company pages posts first, and then just starting to curate and share some stuff that's of interest and having a point of view on top of that. Is that a good starting point for people?
Yeah, 100%. That is the easiest way to start. And again, if you've identified, here are the 2 or 3 topics that I care about, I've come across this interesting article in the paper, I think, this is what I think about that. So yeah, absolutely. It's a crying shame to me. I see people sharing really interesting stuff and then they don't repost or share with a comment. It's just sort of nothing there. It is good to share with opinion, insight, or perspective. I mean, LinkedIn loves it when you do those things. So it does give you points for doing that, I suppose. But it also lets me figure out what would it be like to work with Trevor. If I look at the tone of his posts and his opinions and his thoughts about things, could I see myself working with him? Does he care about the same things that I care about? How does he see the world? So some people can be super active, but if they're just sharing without adding an insight or giving some advice on top of that, then it's a lost opportunity. But that's the best place to start, as is engaging on other people's stuff as well. Going through your feed, following certain tags of topics that you care about, commenting on people's things. Also, it's a great way to build relationships as well. Little is going to come from shooting out 100 connection requests to people that you don't know and they don't know you. But if they're interesting to you and you engage on their content, I mean, that's how you and I have made a lot of connections, isn't it? We may have started not knowing people and they've become, good friends in a lot of cases too after a time. But it takes time. It doesn't happen it just does not happen in a week, no matter what people on Instagram, say about that.
And so then publishing some original posts on it, how do you approach that? Again, the content pillars I think is a good idea. What are the areas that you want to, I call it spheres of conversation, it's all the same sort of stuff, is to have some, I guess, some boundaries of these are the topics that I want to talk about, and that's where you keep your radar on those, and then you just write some, the great thing with people who have been around the block a number of times and who are credible, they've got stories to tell, they've got knowledge, they know this stuff, and they don't have to be the smartest person in the room. In fact, it's best that they don't try and prove that they're the smartest person in the room, but also look at who's my audience and what can I, what value can I add today, and will people like this story and will it be of interest to them? And it's not chest beating, as you say.
It's the curse of knowledge, right? It's the curse of knowledge. So we think, oh, gee, I've said this 1,000 times. Surely this must be boring now for lots of people. But your boring is someone else's, amazing insight, So we should always remind ourselves that sometimes even the simplest things that we know about our craft and the things that we do will be super interesting to someone else who knows a lot less about it. And we can't discount that. I think sometimes we might get caught up a bit of, we need to make it super sophisticated and, to make it interesting. But the basic stuff, the things that you know to be true about your craft, if company A does B, X and Y will surely happen. And you know it in an instant because you've seen it for 20 years, 30 years. That stuff is gold. And I think that's another reason maybe people hesitate to share, is I think it seems really boring and no one will care. But I can assure you the most simplest of ideas can get a lot of traction in social media if we feel brave enough to step out and share those things.
And what do you think, what's your view around the V word, vulnerability? I mean, I know it's a buzzword now. Let's face it, any decent word has been buzzworded and bastardized in the corporate jargon. But, vulnerability in its purest sense, is a powerful thing for leaders. And obviously that extends to social media, but no doubt would scare people a little bit. It's one thing being vulnerable in the boardroom or wherever. It's another thing to be doing it publicly on social media. How are you seeing that? I mean, it's a lot more accepted today than it was 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Well, depends. Are we talking about like a Hollywood style of vulnerability with all the drama that comes with that? Or are we just talking about just being your genuine, honest self?
And, I guess that's the thing. The Hollywood thing really usually is about me, the person, the celebrity. But I think when it comes to business leaders and that, to my mind, vulnerability really is just to not I admit I was wrong, but, it might be just a lesson learned. When I first got this job, I did this, or, just some little insights. It's kind of, someone once said it's called opening the kimono, and I either use opening the kimono or peeling the onion, whatever you want to say, but just peeling off a couple of layers. And I always remember from the early days of social media, there's professional, there's personal, and there's private. Now, personal and professional are interrelated today. I mean, there's no gap between them. Business is personal. You decide private. This is what I've always recommended people. You work out what's private. I don't talk about religion. I don't talk about politics. I don't talk about, family. But apart from that, I'm an open book sort of stuff. And I think sometimes people want those parameters.
Yeah, and it's sensible to sit down and think about where those boundaries are. Absolutely. In the same way you're determining, here's the things I'm going to talk about. Also figure out where you're not going to go. And don't allow yourself to be drawn into things that, are not your space to play in. Yeah. Over the last few years, I've seen, if I look all around the world, some communications folks are saying to the leaders, you need to be visible and you need to have an opinion about this and this and this. But actually, they do not have to have an opinion about every single thing going on, and if it's not sort of strategically aligned to what they want to talk about, then I personally would never push a leader to do something that they felt uncomfortable with. So I think there may be vulnerabilities also linked to that as well. If leaders feel like they're being pushed to go into some territory where they don't feel comfortable, then absolutely that would make you feel vulnerable. So I say don't go there. Don't make this difficult. But it can be a bit tough in the world with issues around sort of societal polarisation, etc. Around all kinds of things. People wanting there to be very strong opinions about certain issues and expect people to have a view on everything. But I could hold a view to your point. I love American politics. I love it. I'm a US politics junkie, but I don't talk. It's not my subject matter that I talk about. That's just my weekend entertainment, right? But I choose not to share about it because I don't want to engage in it. It's just something that I enjoy reading about and learning about. So vulnerability can come if you're pushed into places where you may not feel comfortable. And I say, don't go there if it makes you feel super uncomfortable.
Yeah. So again, the content curation, sharing the company page, sharing articles from writers and media reports that you have an opinion on for whatever reason. It might be a soft opinion at the start, but as you get used to being out on social media, you'll probably start, and a lot of leaders have got strong opinions, and maybe they just need to sharpen that opinion over time. But then creating small posts that you can always riff it into a phone and get it transcribed and someone can write it up for you if the time issue is something. I've got a way around every single bit about time, the challenge of time. But, there's doing the posts. Maybe the occasional photo now is the next layer in. Doing some videos would be another layer in, but pretty good for some leaders and maybe not so good for others. And business professionals, some people prefer the camera and some people don't. And then on LinkedIn, you've got articles and newsletters.
Yeah, I don't talk to me about the newsletters though. I don't know. I think I've got about invitations there for maybe 100 to. I haven't got time to read. I haven't got time to read them all. But look, I like the writing an article in LinkedIn. I think the blogging tool in there is super easy to use. And so if you have, I've got this story. I've got about 800 words in me right now about this. Then I say go for it. Write it up and put it in. And we were talking before about LinkedIn wanting you to stay on the platform. And not that I'm into point scoring, and I don't want people to think about engaging in social media about being some game you play with the algorithm. That's not the right way. That we need to park that. But LinkedIn does love it when you stay on the platform. So writing an article that sits on the platform is a good way to keep people engaged, and LinkedIn keeping you in people's feeds.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's quite a bit there. Well, thanks for unpacking that, Rita. It's been terrific. And I mean, it's softly, but you need a hand behind you to push you a little bit. If you need it, get it. Start small, build up. You'd be surprised but make it a priority. Make it part of your kind of, in quotes, day. get active, because the more you do, the better it will be. As you say, it's like a muscle. And, you don't just have to write a post. You can do videos now. Like, if you're a leader and so many people aren't doing posts and so many people aren't doing videos, and if you do it, you'll get noticed for all the right reasons. And maybe you need someone to interview you and you put those interviews up. There's so many different ways to get that message, the story, to become involved in the conversation, the public conversations that matter to you and your business and your personal brand. There's so much there to do just on one platform. That's without, we haven't even talked about other social media and long form and podcasting and all of that sort of stuff. That's another discussion for another day. But if you don't get this bit right, you won't get the rest right.
And when you do this is the thing, it's fun. So that's a really important message for people as well, is when you do engage and you add value to your network, the network grows. You meet people that you otherwise would never meet in your life, and amazing things can happen to you when that occurs. But that's how I ended up in McKinsey. I wasn't looking for a job at McKinsey. It kind of fell into my lap. And it really came about through my engagement in social media. So wonderful, unexpected things can happen as well when you engage here in a purposeful way. It's productive and it's good fun. Have a crack, I say.
Digital serendipity.
100%.
Well, thank you, Rita. How can people find you? They can clearly connect with you on LinkedIn, of course. But where else online?
RitaZonius.com, and which is also, you're able to click through from my LinkedIn page too. So come and find me on LinkedIn, or reach out to me via my website.
Terrific. Thank you very much again.
Pleasure.